Hello and good evening, I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Let's start with news that several areas in the Klang Valley were hit by yet another water cut due to river pollution. Now, this is the second time within a month that this has happened. Earlier last month, a similar incident left 1.2 million households without water. Now, in this latest case, the pollution was believed to have come from a poultry farm near Sungai Pajam in Negeri Sembilan. However, Air Selangor is still unable to say when water supply will resume, as it's still working to determine the source of the contamination in the river. Now, I'm wondering just how many times will this have to happen again before policies are changed, actions taken? I mean, have we actually gotten any closer to understanding the problems and solutions that will prevent a repeat of this incident?
Well, Melissa, of course, several weeks ago on the show, we spoke to S.P.R. Pakkaran, President of the Association of Water and Energy Research Malaysia, as well as Zaki Zainuddin, a water quality and modelling specialist, about water management in Malaysia. Zaki proposed going beyond the current practice of monitoring just water quality to monitoring potential pollution sources. Here's a clip from that interview.
Yeah, actually, we have water monitoring comes, in terms of water quality monitoring, comes under the Environmental Quality Monitoring Program that's executed by the DOE. We have about 1,300 over river monitoring stations all over the country. But I think the thing that we have to appreciate and we be clear, what we're doing now is we're doing river water quality monitoring. Pollution detection is another issue. That's another matter.
What's the difference?
Water quality monitoring is schedule monitoring. Schedule monitoring, basically, you have a schedule and you monitor every 2 months once, 3 months once, and whatnot. There may or may not be an incident during that period. What we are not doing now is we're not doing pollution monitoring. Okay. Pollution monitoring to detect incidences of pollution. So maybe that's something that we need to look into.
And here's another clip from the same interview. The guest, S.P.R. Pakkaran, President of the Association of Water and Energy Research Malaysia.
And almost 6-7 years ago, we did a survey. We actually followed Department of Statistics sampling. We asked the same question to the public. Surprisingly, more than 70% actually agreed. If states fail to take care of water resources, then we can give it to the federal. And the only way we see it forward is that to call a referendum. I mean, if they can do for Scottish independence and Brexit, we are following the same system, you see. So we can actually call for a referendum, let the people decide.
So that was a conversation we had on the show a couple of weeks ago following that first incident. If you missed that interview, you can catch the whole conversation on astroawani.com. And I think it's really interesting, Sharaad, whether we've truly, action has been taken the second time around, whether we truly understand where reform is actually needed in this entire issue of water management in Malaysia.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like, it's Groundhog Day again with the water crisis.
Right?
Yes, and, and for the people who have to kind of endure, the inconvenience to their lives, to their work, already on top of a difficult situation with the pandemic, I think this is, another reminder of the deep structural problems that we have in governance in the country. It's not just water, it's almost everything. Every aspect of governance in this country needs reform, and serious reform. The question is, who's going to push for it, and who's going to champion that? Pierre Pakkaran mentioned the Scottish referendum.
Right.
When did we last have a referendum on anything in this country?
Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to keep a close eye on this story as it develops. But let's take a look at other news. We have Fitch Solutions. They've highlighted that political ties are playing a role in emerging COVID-19 vaccine deals between Malaysia and China-owned companies. Now, Kanger International, which is a Malaysian bamboo flooring manufacturer with headquarters in Shenzhen, China, last week announced a 3-year license agreement with a China-owned pharmaceutical company, Sinopharm. This is to distribute, promote and market Sinopharm's COVID-19 vaccine in Malaysia. Sinopharm's candidate vaccine is currently in phase 3 clinical trials. Now, I think it's of interest to note in this issue is that Johor UMNO Deputy Chief Nur Jazlan Muhammad is the new chairman of Kanger International. It's also quite interesting to note that Kanger is not a medical or healthcare company. It does bamboo flooring, bamboo furniture, bamboo handicrafts, among others.
You know, Melissa, I can just see the headlines now, bamboozled. You know, our approach to securing the future of Malaysia's vaccines in the era of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh dear.
The question is, because we know that when we look at the candidate vaccines, they're not necessarily going to succeed, which is why we had that conversation on Malaysia joining the COVAX alliance, right? The idea of spreading, you know, your risk, because you can have a bilateral agreement with the pharmaceutical. It doesn't mean that their vaccine is going to work. So the question again, and I think it's come back to this, has Malaysia really signed on to COVAX?
Yes.
Right, has it?
I don't know. I
Well,
mean, that's
so
the,
this is the thing,
that
right?
is the question.
And what is interesting with the arguments being made against it, even after the announcement that we were likely to join it, saying, well, why are we paying for something that we might not get? But that's true of everything. And that's what insurance is about. You might not get sick, but you put down money in the event, in the very likely event, that you, as you age, might get sick.
I do want to point out, though, that according to that Fitch report we cited earlier, they said that the recent agreements indicate that countries with ties to China through the Health Silk Road project, which is under that wider Belt and Road initiative, will have easier access to vaccines being developed in China. So Li Keqiang had promised, I think in August, that priority access to Chinese vaccines in development now will be given to countries in the lower Mekong area. So Vietnam, Cambodia, I think Thailand, Malaysia being some of them that they're working with.
You know, Melissa, of course, there's this article, an article we're quoting, came out in Code Blue, you know, the portal of the Galen Center. Very interesting because it does name the political interests involved in this particular deal and alerts us to the problem of private interests driving national agendas. And the former Deputy Director of Public Health with the Ministry of Health weighed in, you know, on not the specifics of this issue, but just in general, that it's concerned that the national agenda isn't distorted by other types of interests.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. But after this, we will be looking into the plight of university students and those students who were stranded after that sudden change in ministry policy. Stay tuned to consider this.
Global coronavirus yang seolah-olah masih tiada vaksin.
Elakkan pergi ke epicenter
Kalau boleh lah.
Kes-kes ni dapat dikesan dan dikuarantin di hospital ataupun di rumah.
Terdapat 86 rakyat Malaysia di Wuhan.
Sosial ekonomi Bumiputera ini tidak boleh dipisahkan, tidak boleh dikurangkan ataupun ditinggalkan.
Pasal apa saya dekat tunggu kriteria sukses? The success is not necessary pada saya lah. Kalau kita nak menolong sesuatu.
Isra, apa benda Rancak TV ni?
Rancak TV ni adalah sebuah channel digital yang bernaung di bawah Astro AWANI.
Apa yang best sangat dengan Rancak TV ni?
Of course best, sebab dia ada macam-macam cerita. Dia ada cerita pasal isu-isu semasa, cerita pasal kesenian, cerita pasal hiburan, cerita pasal kecergasan, cerita pasal sukan, cerita pasal travel, cerita pasal sejarah, fakta-fakta menarik. Dan mereka juga ada buat short film dan juga
Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. Now, last Friday, the Ministry of Higher Education made a recommendation urging public universities to hold their registrations and lessons for the new semester virtually. This amid a resurgence of COVID-19 cases. Now, many students were already on their way to campus or had already made travel arrangements when the announcement came. And many Malaysians were quick to act to help those stranded university students. One such initiative was hashtag Siswa Jaga Siswa, launched by former Education Minister Maszlee Malik after receiving pleas of help from students affected. Now, he's helped raise more than 150,000 ringgit in less than 24 hours after launching the fund. Maszlee Malik joins us on the show now. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Now, if you could begin by walking us through what happened. I mean, when did you realize that that something needed to be done to help these students?
Hi, Melisa. Hi, Sharaad.
Hi. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Yes,
I think I'm on there now.
Yes, you are. So when did you realize that something needed to be done? When you decided to set up this fund, what was the impetus? What triggered it?
I think a couple of days before I started with the initiative, I already received a lot of, I would say, complaints and I would say plights from all those students asking me to do something, although I'm no longer, in that position. But they said, yeah, we know that you're no longer there, but we are hopeless and helpless. So I couldn't imagine the magnitude of the ramification was that terrible, especially for those who coming from as far as Sabah and Sarawak or from rural places, especially those from the B40 family. So I thought that I need to do something to help them. I just couldn't imagine the hell that they've gone through and they're going to face when they receive at the very 11th hour decision made by the very ineffective or inefficient Minister of Higher Education that we have nowadays.
Maszlee, the question of, anticipating the consequences of decisions made. You've been a minister, you know that sometimes in a crisis situation, policies need to change and they need to change quickly. Could something have been done by the current administration to avoid the situation that the students found themselves in? Or was it unavoidable? Under any government,
no, there are two things here. Sharaad, there are two things here. Number one, they should be expected. They should be expecting this since how many months ago? They should be prepared, especially after looking at few countries have been returned to the lockdown, and after looking at the spiking of cases in Sabah. They should be prepared for the rainy days, but they were busy campaigning in Sabah. There's a problem with the current government. They're busy politicking.
No, okay, so Maszlee, I have to, I'm sorry, I have to just interrupt. I have to interrupt you there for 1 second. I just have to say that very quickly that, in moments of crisis, this was a response to the spike in COVID-19 cases.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a decision that needed to be made to protect the well-being of students. So
it comes to number two. Number two is about communication and communication and communication. The failure of this government, the failure of this ministry is they fail to communicate with the stakeholders. They fail to communicate with the students. And, just people were wondering, where has this minister gone? After the world in a deep shit, and then she came out and minta maaf.
Wouldn't the communication... Wouldn't the onus...
Communication is very terrible.
Wouldn't the onus of communication fall on the respective universities?
The problem is, we need a proper communication. I mean, engagement with stakeholders. Should they have engaged with the student representatives? Should they have engaged with the lecturers? Should they have engaged with the parents earlier? It wouldn't be in such a situation.
Okay, Maszlee, there was this other incident that happened, you and your initiative, are doing quite well in terms of collecting money. There was also Ibit Liu. Ibit Liu, they're trying to arrange buses to transport stranded students. And I wonder, the response from UPSI, the university, seemed very odd to me. What is happening? You have been, when you were minister, you might have engaged with all these individuals, the leadership at university level. What is going through their mind when they demand an apology from somebody who's trying to help?
I have no idea. You need to ask them. I cannot answer on behalf of them. But, it's very unwelcoming. I mean, they should communicate with him in a more appropriate manner when somebody coming to help your own students. yes, he might have not abiding some of the SOPs, but again, engage with him. You should thank him instead of, demanding apologies. It doesn't make an iota sense.
Well, the students that came to you to ask for assistance and, pleas of help from you, what was it that they were asking for? What measures were needed to help the students so that they were not didn't find themselves in this situation?
Yeah, there are a few stages. The very earlier messages, the very earlier, I would say, emails and private messages that have been flooding my inboxes were about complaining their situation. They said that, please do something for us, please be our voice to the ministry, look at our situation. And then the second stage, when they started coming to the university, some of the students, and they were not allowed to enter the universities, and they started to say, we need your help. We need anybody's help. We don't have money. We don't have any place to stay, and we're in a situation, we need to go back. We have spent this much money, but we need to buy a new ticket to go back, and we don't have money. And there where I thought that I need to do something. So the least I could do with my situation now is trying to get the help of the Malaysians. I believe that Malaysians are wonderful, and I was right. When we launched this initiative, the crowdfunding initiative, within less than 24 hours, we managed to get 150K. That is crazy, Malaysians are Samaritans by nature. I started not to lose hope and humanity. Malaysians are wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I think Malaysians are like you. I agree. They are wonderful in times of crisis. I do want to ask you though.
Apart from the ministers, the selfish ministers.
Well,
sorry to say
okay,
that.
I understand your position, but I want to ask you this. It's much more important to long-term consequences of the pandemic. Can universities be made safe? Meaning, can we have students come back to universities, stay in dorms, follow SOPs, and be reasonably content that this is a safe environment for them?
I think that very question should be asked to KKM, or Minister of Health, and the MKN. They should be communicating with the universities. They know better. So the art of empowerment of the universities must be there. And one thing, communication is very crucial. We need to communicate not only with the students, with the parents, but also with the lecturers and the public. Constant communication. And for the minister, she must be brave enough to face the public. She must accept all those questions, all those complaints, whatnot, and respond to them. I still remember when I was a minister, I hate to say that, but we have in our social media platforms a 24 hours response towards any question that came. Any genuine questions must be responded.
Okay. All right.
Communication is very important.
And I believe during the time of your, when you were minister, you too had issues with communication. It was about communicating the policy that you were doing to the public. And I'm glad that you've learned those lessons. I do want to ask you though.
I think my problem, yes.
Do you think that...
I did admit that I may have a lot of shortcomings when it comes to communication, but most of them were political.
Well, if I may come back to the issue at hand, I do want to ask you, do you think that this was the right call to put universities, to make public universities conduct this new semester online when we know very well that schools are still open? Would you have made the same call?
This is a problem when you separate the ministry into two, higher education and whatever they call it, education. They should be put under one roof. So any policies should be and must be consistent.
Would you have made the same call?
If I'm the minister of both higher education and also the basic education, I would have consulted my officers, KKM, and also the MKN, and also the stakeholders. Whatever decision we're making, whatever decision we're going to make, must come out through a thorough engagement with all stakeholders.
Well, I really appreciate your time, sharing your insights with us. So thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Maszlee. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Melisa. Thank you, Sharaad.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more on Consider This. Stay tuned.
No, the war against COVID-19 is still on. It is our responsibility to adhere to all the regulations set by our Ministry of Health. We are in the era of a new norm. Face masks, social distancing, and also hand hygiene are just basics. We can do this together, and let's not take it easy.
COVID-19 is still out there. Let's do our part in following the SOPs in place so that we can break the transmission. Follow the 3 C's. Avoid close conversations, avoid crowded spaces, and avoid confined spaces. We can beat this together.
The war on COVID-19 is not over. We should not take this lightly. Let us ensure all steps are taken to avoid the spread of the virus, be it social distancing, hand hygiene, and wearing of the face mask. It's a new norm. Let's not slack. We can do this.
Hi, thank you so much for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation about the plight of stranded university students after the Ministry of Higher Education's recommendation to hold virtually their registration and lessons for the new semester amid a resurgence of COVID-19 cases. Joining us on the line now, we have Farhan Amran. He's from Demokrat University, Malaysia. He's part of the student union there, assisting those who were caught out by the sudden change in ministry policy. Farhan, good evening. Welcome to the show. Now,
good evening.
Can you tell us what the situation is for students that you're helping? What is the current situation on the ground?
As for now, I think it's controlled. Maybe the uproar happened from the first day when the KPT announced the announcement. Before the announcement, we knew that this was going to happen. And then when they announced, we have assumed or we have predicted that the uproar will be this severe. So I think the first day was very bad for certain universities. Not all universities took the approach suggested by KPT. KPT suggested a very radical and also not considering each and every stakeholder's opinions and also position before they can make the announcement. But some universities did took the suggestions and then made severe things out of all students. Yeah.
Farhan, can you help us understand why universities differ in their responses? Is it a structural issue? Are some universities actively engaging with students as stakeholders and some universities just ignoring students as stakeholders? Why the difference in response to this particular change in policy?
For the public info, I think this is not for general knowledge. I think everyone who's involved in the university's administrations must have known. But each and every university, especially IPTA, has their own autonomy to decide on whether the policy or also orders or directions given by the KPT is not absolute. The university has the say to whether to follow or also to abide by those rules or orders. And then some universities consider how much it might damage their students. And some universities has not critically analyzed how it would affect the students. So yeah, it's a structural problems in terms of maybe they are considering the place of the students that are staying. Right. Maybe there could be another cluster or so on. But I think it's very unfair for universities because the KPT announced it a day or hours before the time for register, or the day before, or the day of registration. So it has affected most of the students inside IPTA, to be very specific. Yeah.
No, I do feel for the plight of the students who had probably made travel arrangements or were kind of stranded on the way to the campuses. But I do want to ask you, Farhan, what kind of help did students need? I mean, was it money? Was it travel arrangement? Was it a place to stay? What kind of help was needed?
Yeah, when we first started the movement of catering the students' needs, I think the first response we had was bus ticket. When they were technically kicked out from university, they don't have money to go back to their hometown, so they were stranded in bus stations. They were stranded in front of the universities. They were stranded everywhere. So at that time, they don't have the capacity to go to the bus stations. They don't have the money to go and buy tickets to go home, because most of them came from quite another state that is far away from the university that they are.
Did you hear of anyone from East Malaysia, students from East Malaysia impacted by this? Because I can imagine, you know, having to change travel plans from East Malaysia at the very last minute could be a massive problem.
Yeah, we had 3 students, 4 students, sorry, 2 from Sabah and 2 from Sarawak, who had took a plane to Semenanjung just to register, and then I'm not saying the university, but yeah, they got not kicked out, but they were ordered to leave. They are not given the chance to stay in the college, and so they were stranded, and they don't have enough money to buy their flight tickets. And then when we first started the kickstart the movement, yeah, we sponsored their tickets, and then it was very devastating to see that they are they're not capable of doing anything. I think this is a very severe problem that must be fixed. Yeah.
Farhan, what do you think is the main lesson students and young people are learning from this incident? Are they looking at themselves and saying, we can't rely on government, we can't rely on university authorities to look after our welfare, and therefore we have to rely on ourselves or people around us? Is there a deep sense of disappointment with these institutions?
I think the first lesson that we can take from here, this crisis, is communication, as what YB Maszlee had said. I'm not going to call him YB, but what Dr. Maszlee said. Communication is very important. The problem with KPT right now is that they don't have the correct timing, the correct words to use, the correct approach to communicate with the students, not only to the students, but to the public on why they make such decisions. And it's very sad to know that the KPT, none of the ministers had response towards the problem. We, the people, had to go down to the grassroots, had to go down to the street, had to go down and find whoever around Klang Valley, to be very specific, when I'm catering, when we were catering students around Klang Valley, we had to go down and find anyone who had not been given the chance to stay at night. We catered almost 80 students. 50 students were placed around residential areas in Petaling Jaya, Sunway and Shah Alam. Of course, with a very kind-hearted Malaysian. And also, another lesson for us to learn, the youngsters, is that we must not rely to politicians, ministers, or the government 100%, because at the end of the day, we only have us to do this. We only have the people to do this. The people had gone through many things, had gone beyond what the politicians cannot do, to do a lot of things. And then the ministers must take this as a lesson for them to see that the people put you out there, the people place you to be the leader, so you must act like one. Don't act up like we, the people, must do everything for you. We clear your things, we clear your problems, and then you take credit for it. And that is not something that we are proud of. But we are trying to send a message to the politicians out there, from the government bloc or the opposition bloc, that we, the people, can do a lot of things without you guys.
Well,
so
Farhan,
this is a clear message to you.
I appreciate your time joining us on the show tonight, and you know that you and your cohorts are in a tough spot, but all the best to you. Thank you so much for speaking with us this evening.
Welcome.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching. Good night.